Hey, thanks for Lynn for being here. Anybody else? Okay, now, by chance, I'm Dave Bray. I get to be the MC, and we get to welcome St. Catherine's. We have about 12 representatives from St. Catherine's. Thank you guys for being here today. Thank you.
Intro here. Like you said, I've been coming to Wilshire since the early 2020s, kind of COVID time type of thing, and then been coming ever since. I worked over at Hughes, used to be Hughes Fullerton over by, Gilbert and Melbourne. And every time I go to Albertsons, I think of building 618 as the building where I used to work at. So I get this little blast of the past on it. And today we're going to discuss scams about the internet, your phone. So if you have a phone, you're on the internet, even if you just have a landline phone, you're still susceptible for that. What we want to do is talk about different things, and if there's any questions, since it's just kind of a learning period, feel free to interrupt me. If you have a penetrating comment, also feel free to interrupt. The goal is for you to be more aware, to be vigilant, but not be paranoid. Maybe this close to being paranoid, okay, but not paranoid. And thinking about that, about being vigilant, I remember going to LAX, and at the Bradley terminal, I think there were signs all over the place that said, beware, careful of pickpockets. They were all over there, right? So I walked around. I didn't skip going to the terminal, but I was vigilant and careful about it. And thinking about pickpockets, I heard from Tom Constable a story about a guy who named Bob. And he had his pocket picked one time. He was getting ready to travel abroad, and I remember when I was getting ready to travel, people warned me, be careful of pickpockets, especially like on the train, right? They'd go kind of bump into you, take your wallet, and they'd be off, and you're in the train, stuck. And so Bob went on his travel. He was determined to be very careful. But one evening, he was dressed in his casual clothes, and lo and behold, he went onto the subway, and sure enough, as the door opened, somebody bumped into Bob. Oh, I forgot my water. And Bob thought, that was strange. And he felt around for his wallet. It wasn't there. So Bob grabbed this fellow's jacket. He pulled it off him, and just as the doors closed, he got it. And the train was off, and the guy looked kind of puzzled as to what happened staying on the station. Bob got the jacket, looked in, his wallet wasn't there. But the story has a happy ending. Because when he got back to his hotel, he found out that his wallet was on his dresser. Unfortunately, the next story about Bob doesn't have a happy ending. He got on his laptop, got onto his email, and he saw a note from PayPal that said his account has been suspended. And he's kind of tired, already flustered about what happened. And so he goes and clicks on the link, right, enters in his password, his two-factor authorization, and comes up and nothing seems wrong. but it's too late because he was actually sent to a false website and they captured his information, and later that day he started seeing a bunch of emails come up about purchases from PayPal. Okay? And there's a word for this behavior. It's called social engineering. That's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. And that's the psychological manipulation of people into performing actions, right? He saw that, oh, my account has problems, I better do something about that. And the goal is to divulge confidential information, right? In our case here, it's typically they exploit the trust. You know, someone you believe is on the phone. There's urgency or fear, something's going to happen, you're going to be arrested, etc., to get you to act. And what's the goal? The goal is to find out your, what they call credentials, so that they can get access into your accounts, right? They need to know maybe like your user ID, your password, and then they have what they call two-factor authentication. That means there's two pieces needed, your password, and maybe there's a token you get, like SMS code, and enter in the 6-digit code, etc., to try to, help people not be able to log in. But if they can get that code from you and they have your password, well, then they can get in. Now, question is, why us seniors? And Jenny and Cliff, I don't mean you guys met us. In general, I thought of that as I came in and they parked near me. And it's effective because of us, not because we lack intelligence or anything, but we have generational traits from back then, right? How many people, it was bad, or you're being rude if you'd hang up on somebody on the phone, right? Right? Scammers take advantage of that. They want to keep on talking. I remember one time I told my mom I hung up on the phone on somebody. She said, well, that was rude. Well, they were trying to exploit that. The second thing is that, there's so much, technology is changing so much nowadays, right? It's hard to keep up with everything. In fact, my grandson knows how to use this phone better than I, because they're just into it, doing it. Things change, and they can even spoof your phone number, right? You can get a phone that says Bruce McIntyre on Brad's phone, but it may not be me. So they can do that. They have what they call obscure URL, the little thing you put www dot whatever, that's called the URL, the Universal Resource Locator. They make it really complicated, so you really can't figure out who it's for anyway. And so they do that. And then also, they use high pressure tactics. They try to get us, this emergency is happening, I better react to that. And you then don't think about, well, what's this condition going on? You need to slow down, think about things, etc. Now, there are several different techniques. We're going to talk about a few of them here. And then by far, this doesn't list all of them. And they continue to evolve. Okay, one is phishing. That's kind of most common. That was the example we saw with poor Bob, where it's an email, right? It's really PH because phishing, right? You're throwing out the fishing line with a lure and you hope somebody bites. It's easy to send out emails, right? So you send out a bunch of emails. A lot of people may ignore them, but maybe one or two will do that and they're hooked. Then there's baiting as another one. Think of this as like there's a USB drive you find on the ground. You go, finders keepers. Plug it into your machine. There's actually malware on there that'll take over and perhaps get it. So they hook you into that. Then there's also vishing, where again, they try to make you act quickly. The phone, do things, you hear a call, you gotta react, can hurt you. There's pretexting. Now this here is where a technique where they use a false identity to try to have you give up information. For example, a cyber criminal may know that you just recently bought an Apple laptop. And so they call up and say, we're Apple service. We need to verify your account. Can you please blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's another type of thing. Again, a lot of these are things that, come spontaneously. You're not expecting them. It's what they come on their own. Another case is what they call quid pro quo. And this here is maybe a lot of times at work where they impersonate as an IT person and says, we have a support ticket for you. Give me your login information so I can go on your computer and fix it for you. And then another one is SMS texting phishing, smishing, right? Get those text messages that are from strange places, etc. You want to be careful about them. And then 7 is scareware, where if you click on a link before and up on your machine comes that virus has been detected, blah, blah, blah. They try to get you to link on that and contaminate your machine. Now, there are several approaches that they have there. One is authority, right? You get a text message, this is from the IRS, or this is the cops, etc. A lot of times your thing to do is to verify credentials, especially if it's unsolicited. Intimidation, maybe do a harsh tone. For example, on work, this person may be calling and said, if you don't reset my password right now, I will call your supervisor. And so, try to get you in to do something like that. Consensus. Well, Joe down the street has done that. Why are you holding back? It's kind of a common thing to do. Another one is scarcity, right? Maybe there's a limited time to get something. Now, Amazon uses it in a legitimate type of sense, right? You get these flash sales, or only 3 items left, right? Kind of a scarcity there, but on the, on a texting too, right? You can get this now, but it'll be up in a short time. You better respond. And then similarly, urgency, right? You're going to lose your account if you don't do something in 5 minutes, etc. Then a couple others, familiarity. They try to say like, oh, I'm a good friend of yours. You've done good. Why don't you do this? And then finally, trust. They may come up and say, we've spoken before. And at my age, I can't remember if they did or not. One thing good about that is that right when I watch the Hallmark movies, I don't remember it after 3 or 4 years. So even though they're saying the same thing, we finally go, oh yeah, we remember that part. Oh yeah, that's right, we remember that. But they do the trust, right? They try to kind of make you think. So the idea we want to talk about is stay safe online. And time allowing, we'll get to some phishing, smishing, vishing, and in some impersonation. And then if we get done with that, we'll have some bonus material. Again, if you have questions, feel free to ask. Don't mind being interrupted. So here's the case, right? We have this request from PayPal. You've noticed unusual activity in your account. And you look closely and maybe the address above there really isn't from PayPal, but you don't pay attention to that because you're focusing on the issue there. So you go and okay, there we go. Okay. You go, click the link, you get to this fake website, log in like as poor Bob did before, and they know your information. So let's talk just briefly, we won't go into the details, but how something like this works. So you have what they call an attacker. Now this may be an individual, a group. Nowadays organized crime is involved in it, and even state sponsorship, like Russia, China, have organizations that do that. A lot of times their organizations are to penetrate into the government sites. In fact, the U.S. Department of Defense classified list of clearances got broken into, and people that were in that list got 10 years free of, web watching paid for by the government. But here they will go and they will create a phishing email right there, and you send it out to the person. And before they've done that, they created a fake website that looks very similar to the real website. They can easily copy the internal information from a real website, so it's easy to masquerade one. And then you go enter your information and it may redirect you to the real website. Maybe it'll say error, but they've caught that information. They have your data now, and now they can use it. Now the question goes, well, how did they get my email address in the first place? Well, you've heard about data breaches, right? Well, they can get it from that, and on the dark web, they will sell it. And there's a website called Have I Been Pawn, and the term pawn originates from ganging slang, meaning owned, and here it signifies that your email, along with potentially your password and personal data, have been exposed publicly. So I went to that website and entered my name in, my email, and I have 7 sites, or that email has been pulled out of 7 different places. So I entered Brian's address in just to see, or Brian, it's church address, not his personal one. And he's the winner. He had 8 breaches.
What do I win? What do I win?
5 more emails per day. And so it's easy that the information is out there. So you got to be very careful about that. Now let's look at some red flags of phishing emails. Okay? One of them is you can look for generic content and greetings, right? Dear customer, because they may not know your name for that. Examine the email from address area, where it's from. A lot of times it'll have weird gibberish from them. In fact, I get about 3 or 4 emails a day now saying my AAA travel pack is available, click on here. You know, and it has an email address from Serbia or something as the from on it. Look for urgency or demanding actions. Carefully check all links, although that is becoming more obsolete because nowadays even the good ones have these cryptic links on them and who knows where they go to. Another thing to look at is notice incorrect grammar or odd phrasing. Check again that the website is secure, and then be careful about clicking attachments. There can actually be what they call malware in an attachment, and loading it in and opening it may cause problems for your computer. So be very careful on that. Now here's one where, excuse me for a second, they actually have the sending address was from PayPal. Actually came from PayPal. And what the person was able to do is expose a flaw in the way PayPal sends out updates. If you put another name on as for a gift, like I want to give Brad a gift, I can put his address in there. But the flaw is that the address for the name can be as long as you want. So here the person skipped the whole name, right, and entered in basically a whole message that says, you know, you've ordered this thing, call this number. And then there's a link down there. Okay, I look at it, it's PayPal. It is a real PayPal thing. And what this person was able to do was to have PayPal send him the message of which he uses what they call forwarding, which then forwarded it to a bunch of other people. With one button, you can send a single email to a lot of people. So it says PayPal, but it comes to Bruce McIntyre, comes to Brian, because they have his email from a data breach. Comes to others like that, okay? And then you don't want to call that number, right? Because that number is probably, in this case, a fake PayPal number. So they're going to answer at PayPal, get your information, and voila. So you go and say, okay, what I'll do is I'll go and Google PayPal and I'll get their number. So you go and you verify. You want to go verify that number. So I type in PayPal, and here's the Google results that I actually did. And you notice at the top, it says sponsored content. Well, I always thought that when it said sponsored content, that it really just prioritized PayPal thing. But it's actually a package that a sponsor can put in. And they have found that that doesn't necessarily go to PayPal. They've had cases, for example, of Viking Cruises and others. People enter the cruise site, they click on the sponsored link, and they get a fake cruise site thing, get their money, everything, and not have any tickets. So you don't know where you're going to go when you have that. And other times I've, just typed it in and clicked the sponsored one just because it was faster than scrolling down to the bottom. So after doing the research and learning about this, I don't do that anymore. Okay? And what you want to do then is don't click on the sponsor result, but click down below the sponsored result. And here's a case where a company called Malwarebytes, they actually had two different bad links, sponsored sites for the same thing. And if you clicked on it, it actually loaded something on your computer page that infected your computer. So again, the take back right is even though don't trust the numbers, don't trust the links, and be very careful and only go to the real site that you typed in yourself. Here's another case where someone's flight was canceled and they had Air France flight, and so they used Google Maps, I don't know why, to go and get the number for the local Air France to change his tickets. Well, someone was able to get in, modify that phone number, and he called them and of course didn't get his tickets and lost some money. And here's a case like for Magnolia, right? In Google Maps, and you see that thing where it says, suggest an edit? Well, lets anybody put in an edit. So you can suggest an edit, falls through their people, and now they can have somebody else's number there. So again, go to the official sites. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about SMS phishing or smishing. And again, these are very similar pattern as you see with phishing, right? And SMS stands for short message service. In this case here, someone got a text from the DMV, and it says your payment for Express Lane must be settled by April 23rd, 2025. Okay, well, I don't use it, so I just get rid of it, right? No cost to them. They just, maybe a penny, half a penny. They just send it out to all sorts of people. But maybe somebody did use it. And now they go, what? They didn't get my payment? And it says pay here. And you notice it has easypass.com that makes it seem right. .etc.syl. So that's really .vip. So you notice the rest of it is the full address. So it's actually going to something .vip, not to easypass.com. Although you can make you kind of think to do that, right? And so, again, you have to be careful about these things and call the person if you are not suspecting something like this to verify. Okay, here's another one. This one here kind of drives off of a goal of getting money, right? You won the weekly prize, blah, blah, blah. Go click here to claim it. Oh, I've seen several of these I've got. FedEx, down there, sorry. There we go. FedEx, Fed UPS or whatever, your delivery can't be delivered. Please contact us to reschedule. Now you're going to give them a name and they'll probably ask you for a credit card or something to verify your account, all trying to sneak you into it. And then another case may be a login has been detected from China. If this wasn't you, let us know. Right? It wasn't me. We need first to verify that it really was you. Please enter in this code. Well, they may be doing is actually on a site log, they had your ID and your password, and they need a code to log into your account. So they'll send this out, they'll get the request for a code, you'll get a code come up, and you'll type in that code. Usually like Chase and Fidelity, others will say,